Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and this is Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Welcome to our new series. So first of all, let us just conclude everything that we have been through over the last, I would say, 10 months. So I remember the candle that has been lit here, going back to the teaching called Watchmen. It's about 10 months ago. When my wife and I came out of our sabbatical, right? We said that we would really get in with God, no teachings, no work. Again, I didn't even take any work, nothing. Mamash at the grace of God. We were just moving forward, that He would handle all of our needs, and indeed He has, because we needed concentration to elevate, to get up to that next level. And within that next level over there, within that time, I taught what needed to be taught, starting with the teaching Watchmen, which you could see. And then we went on the series of Acharit Kereshit. We were talking about the end times, end of days, what to look out for, how it's relevant to each and every one of us today, what our responsibilities are as Jews and as the nations. What exactly are we supposed to do? What are we called to do? How do we recognize what's coming? And so on and so forth. Interesting series, very long, meticulous, but I mean, if you want to know what's going on. And what do we base everything on? The Exodus from Egypt, and also then the return to Zion and the Second Temple. Anyway, it's all there. So that's when I lit this candle first time. And it just so happens, right? So we concluded with that series about how to come in, and then we had the whole thing on how to get out of Edom, which is why the series is also called the Red Series. Incidentally, and so for going from blue to red, just so you know, in the Sfirot, blue is chesed, is grace. It's the side of Abraham. Gvura, which is red, is the side of Yitzchak. And then, so once we're done with the Gvura over there, now we're into Tiferet, splendor. This is where Torah really comes in, combined with chesed and Gvura. Now we get the pure and best form of Torah be'ahava, in love. So I think if you watch the last video, 20 minutes before the video was done, this candle that just was lit over there just completely poured out, and that's the end of the candle. And I remember I looked at when this whole thing started. There we go. See? What's that say? It says perfect, right? Because I used it as an example to the 3 stages of creation, and all together is perfection. But now this is the end of an era, and I'll pick that up later. And beginning of something new. Also, we are in Nisan, so Chodesh Tov to everyone. Aleph Nisan happened over this past Shabbat. Nisan, the uniqueness of Nisan, it is a powerful Rosh Chodashim Hu Lachem for the Jewish people. Nisan, this is the beginning of our months. This is the beginning of our year. Tishrei is the beginning of the year as far as the world is concerned, right? Aleph Tishrei is when Adam was actually created. But that is called the 7th month. The first month is the one we are currently in. And this month is so powerful that every single day of this month carries the same weight as Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is a powerful time. It's like a Yom Kippur Katan. You can ask for requests. Everything you say is doubled and tripled and quadrupled. It has a power to it. Every single day this month has that power. Every day on Nisan, you are not allowed to mourn. Just like on Adar, you must be happy. On Nisan, you are not allowed to be sad, not for any reason. That's why also on Nisan, we don't say Tachanun, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu. We don't beat our chests, because this is the month of miracles. So now, if you guys are ready to come along with me to the Exodus right now, hopefully you left all the idolatry behind. And incidentally, all of you who have sent emails, oh, what beautiful emails. I mean, thank you so much for the encouragement and everything. And, you finish listening to all the series and you understand there's something in there for you. And then once you get that, you'll see that everything coincides and you are exactly where you need to be. Okay, so I'm still waiting for you over here. You send those emails, send me, I need to talk. Email number, what your time zone is, and I will give you a call. Okay? Regardless of where you are. But I need to, this is not only for you, this is for me, and this is for us, because we need all the sparks, every last one. And like I said very clearly, whoever doesn't come does not need to come. So I'm not worried about that, but whoever does come, brother, sister, exactly. This is where we're at. So, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. I love this book so much, and this is also why I decided to what would come next, the next teaching after this. The last series sort of just kind of came in and like, wow, I need to do this, so I did it. But this one, oh boy, I really do love it. So, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai used to say, if all the sages of Israel were on one scale of the balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, Rabbi Eliezer, on the other scale, he would outweigh them all. So today we have the privilege of exponentially expounding upon our general knowledge of Torah, halacha, Kabbalah, Midrash Agada, traditions, and everything else from behind the scenes. Our timeline spans from creation itself, actually almost before creation itself, what God was thinking before he created everything. As we delve into the secrets of the universe all the way through the entirety of the Tanakh, to Gog and Magog, to the coming of Messiah and the resurrection of the dead, everything is in this book. This book is based on the life, the studies, and the findings of Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, also known as Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, Rabbi Eliezer the Great. Just so you understand. So this book sitting here right now, again, they're not just for looks. Although this one is, because it's one of those this smells so good. All right, so this is what it looks like. I'm just gonna put it close. It looks like a Talmud, right? You have some Hebrew over here, and you have Rashi writing, not Rashi though, but Rashi writing on both sides. This is the Bi'ur Radal. Okay, so this is what the original Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer looked like with the commentary. At first, it was just the smaller part. So this thing is more difficult to study with because, again, the more help you get, the more clarification you get. It's a 70 faces of Torah. You have a better idea of its dimensions. So this is the latest iteration of Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, and as you could see, it's the same format and everything. Here is the Bi'ur Radal, just like you see in the original, but then you have the Maharzu, Bihur Maspik, Bait Agadol, and so on and so forth. You have other commentators in here to help explain in their language during their generation how they see these same things. None of them contradict, but they only add to. It's a beautiful thing. This book is not, you cannot find it in English. However, if you go onto Sefaria, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, you can find it there. Okay, so you guys could follow along, and it's very important. So I'm going to continue what I read over here. All right, so he lived during the times of the Second Temple and belonged to the house of Shammai. His direct teacher was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, and his contemporary was Rabban Gamliel, who ended up becoming his brother-in-law. His students included Onkelos, who was a convert, as in Targum Onkelos, right? Onkelos, you can find, I'm going to take here now. Shtay Mikra ve'echad Targum. In every single Torah that should be, when they make you read the Torah over here, next to it is Onkelos, who wrote in Aramaic. Onkelos was a ger. He was a convert. And we are called to read Onkelos every single week because of what he did. And I think I discussed actually Onkelos in one of the previous teachings. He was a nephew of Titus. And he did a seance before he converted. He brought up Titus and Bilam and the other guy. Anyway, watch the teachings. Very interesting. So, we got Onkelos, then we have Rabbi Ishmael also. And of course, one of the greatest of all time. Rabbi Ishmael was his student. And the other student and one of his greatest of all time was Rabbi Akiva. So these works and stories of Rabbi Eliezer go back around 2,000 years. Now, this book has been compiled sometime between 650 and 900 CE. So it's roughly 1200 to 1350 years old, the compilation of the book. But the writings go back, again, 2,000 years. The original came with no commentary, of course, and over the years there have been a number of great sages whose commentary has been added to these teachings. Some of them are, and I'm going to list some of them. The Radal. Radal lived from 1798 to 1855. He was a rabbi, commentator, and a linguist, one of the greatest Torah scholars in his generation. He authored commentaries on the Babylonian Talmud and Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. He has written over 18 books and is widely known and respected in the Jewish world. The other one is, so he's the main one. He's the one even that came in the older copy. The other one, Mahalzu, Rabbi Ze'ev Wolf Einhorn. Date of birth unknown. He died in 1861 in Vilna. A scholar and commentator and author of Psikat Rabati, the Rav Kahana, and many other midrashim. I have those books as well. Again, all these things just blow your mind. But Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is a very good all-encompassing balance, which is why I specifically chose it, and it's also very easy to follow. Bait Hagadol, or Bait Gadol, translation, big house. Rabbi Avraham Aaron ben Shalom Broda. It's like, hey, big house, how you doing? You know, but that was what they called him. There is not much written about this rabbi, but he came from a well-respected lineage of sages from Prague to Belarus. He was the chief rabbi of Starvin, which is near Belarus, before he died. Another one, Velo Od Ela. That's the rabbi's nickname, if you will. Rabbi Eliyahu ben Avraham Shlomo HaKohen from Izmir, 1659 to 1729. He was a commentator, a Kabbalist, and an author of dozens of books. He was extremely wealthy, but made it his business to give most of his fortune away to charity and encourage the rich to do the same. Practiced what he preached, right? Next, Hagahut Ya'avatz, Rabbi Yaakov Israel Bar Tzvi Ashkenazi Amdin, one of the great European rabbis of the 17th century. He fought tooth and nail against the Messianic Shabtai Tzvi cult, as we brought them up briefly. Another false messiah was Shabtai Tzvi. He had thousands of followers. He ended up converting to Islam. And he used practical Kabbalah to perform magic, to get the crowds to follow him. And last, we have Par Echad, one bull. Rabbi Chaim Palaji, 1788 to 1869. He was a Jewish-Turkish chief rabbi of Smyrna, of Izmir, and author in Ladino and Hebrew. His titles included HaChacham Bashi and Gaon. Meaning they called him Chacham Bashi and Hagaon Rabbi Chaim Palaji, right? Just like Hagaon mi Vilna, the genius from Vilna. He is the author of dozens of books and commentators, and is likely a descendant of Samuel Palachi or his brother Joseph Palachi of the 16th century and early 17th century merchant, diplomat, and, get this, pirate. That's right. And by the way, if you guys did not know this, I would love to get more information about this, but I do know this. The whole pirates, as in, rebelling against the king of England and all that stuff, they were primarily Jews. No, the whole with the long beard, that Jews, pirates, and they gave tulmotu masrot. They gave their tithes from the booty that they would take off the other ships, and tulmot. They would feed families. They would feed communities through piracy. I love it. It's hilarious, right? Captain Jack Sparrowovich, All right, so these are some of the main commentators added to the book as taken from books that they themselves wrote that can be cross-referenced to the topics discussed. Okay, in other words, they didn't just sit there with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer and said, I'm going to comment here, comment there. They have their own well-respected lineages and books, and from their books, they referenced Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, or Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says da-da-da-da, and so on and so forth. So they took all these compilations and put them in this book. That's why this book is amazing. I love it. The good thing is that this book, like I said, can be found in Sefaria within the English translation. That's another reason why I chose it, because you guys could follow along. However, it is grossly incomplete with missing sections. All of a sudden, I'm reading the English and then I'm comparing the Hebrew, and just sections are missing. Strange translations at times, and also there's no available commentary in English, but that's why I'm here. So don't worry. When I'm reading it in English, it's after my translation from the Hebrew itself to the English. So you understand everything is over there. Okay, nevertheless, you can follow it along. So many of the topics here are going to be mind-boggling, and I can tell you from personal experience, the commentary definitely helps. In addition, you will have plenty of me in here as well. That's what I do, and I guess my unique way of explaining things, if you haven't been offended by now. Now, before we get into it, you have to understand how these teachings will benefit your knowledge in all areas of Torah, in all walks of life. Here's what is to come. The work is divided into 54 chapters. This could keep us busy for the next year, okay? But anyway, 54 chapters which have been divided into 7 groups. Now, I'm going to read the topics because whenever I get a book and I just see the topics of what I'm going to be reading about, that gets me excited. So here's what you're going to be learning, okay? So first of all, we start off chapters 1 and 2, which is what we're going to be learning today. Introduction to the entire work dealing with the young Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, his thirst for knowledge, and his settlement to Jerusalem, how he became to even become Rabbi Eliezer the Great. Next, chapters 3 to 11 corresponds to Genesis 1 and 2, the 6 days of creation. On the first day, we're talking about the first day of creation, occurred the king of the four kinds of angels and the 47 clouds. On the second day of creation of heaven, the angels, the fire of mankind, and the fire of Gehenna, of Gehenom, of hell. The third day, the division of the waters, fruit trees, herbs, and grass. The fourth day, creation of the lights, astronomy, and the determination of the intercalation. The leap year reckoning is imparted to Adam, Enoch, Noah, Shem, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The fifth day, birds and fish, enumeration of the kinds which may be eaten, also the story of Jonah, which is said to belong to the fifth day. The sixth day, God's conference with the Torah in regard to the way in which man should be created, since God is the first king of the world. All the great rulers are enumerated in order to refer to God as the first one. Okay, so once you see kings, once you start counting the kings in the world, God is always one, remember. Next, we have the time from Adam to Noah, the placing of man in the Garden of Eden and the creation of Eve. Description of the 3 evil qualities which shorten the life of man: envy, lust, and ambition. Identification of the serpent with the Samech Mem, with who you call Satan. Announcement of the 10 appearances of God upon the earth. Eser Yeridot, 10 times throughout the whole Tanakh that we see, and God descended. 10 of these. First appearance of God in the Garden of Eden and the punishment of the first pair. The 2 ways, the good and the evil, are pointed out in Adam, who enters upon his penitence. The story is interrupted here to be continued in chapter 20. Detailed discussion of the 3 pillars of the world: Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim. You could see Pirkei Avot 1-2 over there. Torah, the studying of Torah. Avodah is work, meaning performing the mitzvot, and Gemilut Chasadim is kindness for others. This is what the entire world is based on. So like I said, even if you do Gemilut Chasadim, it's as if you are exacting Torah. You understand? You can't miss from this. God's kindness towards Adam, that of the Hananites towards Jacob, and the consideration to be shown towards those in mourning. The literary quarrel between the Shemites and the Hillelites, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, as to whether heaven or earth was created first. The 10 things which were created on Friday evening, when Adam was created. Exegesis of Psalms 8, which Adam sang in the Garden of Eden. Did you know this? Discussion of the Havdalah, blessing of the Sabbath evening, and the completion of Adam's penitence. He did tshuva. Cain and Abel, Cain's penitence. Birth of Seth, the sinful generation, and the story of Noah. Okay, that's just the second section. I'm reading you right now all the topics that we are going to delve into. Chapters 24 to 25, the sinful generation, Nimrod, God's second appearance, second descent, as we could see, Hava Neredna, right? Come, let us go down and see what mess they're creating again, the confusion of tongues and the dispersion. Nimrod is killed by Esav, who takes his garments, which Jacob then puts on in order to secure the blessing. The following, next one, we have from Abraham to the death of Jacob. The 10 temptations of Abraham, Lot's imprisonment and Abraham's pursuit of the kings, God's covenant with Abraham, the circumcision and the appearance of the angels, identification of Hagar with Keturah, and the story of Ishmael, because Keturah was Hagar, basically. The sacrifice of Isaac, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Esav, proofs given by Elijah, Elisha, and Shalom ben Tikva that the dead are resurrected through the liberality of the living. Those that will be found worthy to be resurrected, from the sale of the birthright to the time when Jacob left Beersheba, from Jacob at the well to his flight from Laban's house. Repetition of the 3 preceding chapters. We go over everything. Story of Dinah and of the sale of Joseph. God's 4th appearance in the vision of Jacob while he was on his way to Egypt. Joseph and Potiphar, Joseph in prison, interpretation of the dream, the sale of the grain, Jacob's blessing and death. We're not done. Next topic, from the appearance of Moses to the time when God revealed himself to him in the cleft of the rock. 5th appearance of God to Moses from the burning bush, the miracles performed by Moses before Pharaoh. God's 6th appearance on Sinai, Pharaoh's persecution, the value of penitence. Pharaoh is not destroyed, but becomes king of Nineveh. Amalek's pursuit in the desert, Saul and Amalek and Sancherib. The golden calf, Moses' descent from the mountain, his prayer because of Israel's sin. Moses on Sinai, his descent and the destruction of the golden calf. 7th appearance of God to Moses. And now for the final sections, this is the sin committed at Baal Peor. The courage of Pinchas, Phineas also, right? The priestly office conferred upon him for life as recompense. Pinchas is Elijah, as we know, eternal life. Computation of the time Israel spent in servitude down to the exodus from Egypt. Continuation of the story of Amalek, the passing over of Nebuchadnezzar and Haman. Story of Esther, holiness of the months and of Israel. Enumeration of the 7 miracles. Abraham in the furnace. Jacob's birth. Abraham's attainment of manhood. And you could look that up also in Sanhedrin 107b. Jacob sneezes and he does not die. It's funny, but it's not. Anyway, we'll discuss where did this whole sneezing thing come from. The sun and the moon remain immovable at the command of Joshua. King Hezekiah becomes ill but recovers. Daniel in the lion's den, what went down over there. Moses is slandered by Aaron and Miriam. Avshalom and his death. God's 8th appearance in punishment of Miriam. So, as you can, again, we're getting into all these topics. Don't worry. Sit back, enjoy yourself. It's gonna be good. So as you can see, your well of knowledge is going to grow exponentially as there is more than enough all-encompassing material here from before creation itself until the very end of days. So without further ado, chapter 1. This is the introduction to Eliezer ben Horkanus and his entrance into Torah. The following befell Rabbi Eliezer, son of Horkanus. His father had many plowmen who were plowing arable ground, whereas he was plowing a stony plot. He sat down and wept. His father said to him, "O my son, why are you crying? Art thou perchance distressed because thou dost plow a stony plot? In the past, thou hast plowed a stony plot. Now behold, thou shalt plow with us arable soil." Hey, okay, you can stop plowing the stones. Come, maybe we'll see some fruit for all your labor. He sat down on the arable ground and he wept. Okay. His father said to him, "But why are you crying? Art thou perchance distressed because thou art plowing the arable land?" He replied to him, "No." Horkanus, his father, said to him, "So why are you crying?" He answered him, "I weep only because I desire to learn Torah." Horkanus said to him, "Verily, thou art 28 years old, yet dost thou desire to learn Torah?" Now, 28 years old, if you know this, is very interesting. Who else was 28 years old when they were discovered, if you will? That would be David. When he got the call to come in over there, and Samuel was like, you got another son? None of these are them. So Jesse was like, I got another questionable guy. He's out, he's never slept under a roof in his life. Didn't even live in the city. David lived in the fields until he's 28 years old. And when he was 28, they called him in, and that's when Samuel anointed him, according to God, the next king of Israel. This is my king. God said, this guy's my guy. And it even said there was a miracle happened over there, that the anointing oil from the horn, it came out itself, and it released upon David, and the crowd over there saw it. So David was 28 years old. Just like, here we go. A guy who's 28 years old with a desire to learn Torah, doesn't learn Torah. Don't worry. Everybody gets their shot, and it's never too late. Like we said, Rabbi Akiva only learned how to read when he was 40, and Moses got the call when he was 80. So we don't really have any excuses now, do we? Okay, so you're 28 years old, and now you want to learn Torah? Maybe it's too late for you. Nay, go take thee a wife and beget sons, and thou wilt take them to the school. Live the American dream. He fasted 2 weeks, not tasting anything, until Elijah, may he be remembered, Elijah the prophet, may he be remembered for good, appeared to him and said to him, Son of Hyrcanus, why are you crying? He replied to him, Because I desire to learn Torah. Elijah said to him, If thou desirest to learn Torah, get thee up and go to Jerusalem to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. That's what you do. You want Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. That is the only place you should be learning Torah from. Kosher places, of course. He rose and went up to Jerusalem to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and sat down and wept. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, Why are you crying? He answered him, Because I wish to learn Torah. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, Whose son are you? But he didn't tell him, because his dad was an influential guy, one of the wealthiest. But we'll get to that. Rabbi Yochanan asked him, Hast thou never learnt to read the Shema, or the Tefillah, that's the Shmoneh Esrei, or the grace after meals, Birkat HaMazon? He replied to him, No. Now this is very difficult, because today it's one of those things that you learn, especially if you grow up in an Orthodox home. These are things you just know how to say. I remember when I was a kid, my mom's like, yeah, okay, Shema Yisrael. So you know how to say the Shema right on there on before you go to sleep. So these are our prayers. And this guy growing up during the time of some of the greatest sages alive didn't know how to say Shema, Shmoneh Esrei, or the Birkat HaMazon. He says no. He arose, and Rabbi Yochanan taught him the 3 prayers. Great. So we'll start with these 3. Again he sat down and wept. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, My son, why are you crying? He replied, Because I desire to learn Torah. Thanks for all the prayers. Wonderful. But I really want to learn Torah. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was from the lineage of David. He was the Gadol Ador at that time, mind you. So Elijah's like, go learn with the number 1 guy. All right? He replied, because I desire to learn Torah. He thereupon taught him 2 rules of the law every day of the week. Rules of the law, halachot. How do you live like a Jew? This is what you do. And on the Sabbath, Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer was just an Eliezer, repeated them and assimilated them. You take the laws that you learn and you put it into practice. Obviously, only if they're pertaining for Shabbat, right? He kept a fast for 8 days without tasting anything until the odor of his mouth attracted the attention of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, who directed him to withdraw from his presence. He's like, tic-tac, something. He sat down and he wept. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, My son, why are you crying? He replied, Because thou didn't make me withdraw from thy presence, just as a man makes his fellow withdraw when the latter is afflicted with leprosy. You were really not nice about it. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, My son, just as the odor of your mouth has ascended before me, so may the savor of the statutes of the Torah ascend from thy mouth to heaven. Don't worry about that right now. Worry that what comes out of your mouth will actually go directly to heaven. The statutes of Torah, as in the chukot and mishpatim, the halachot. He said to him, my son, whose son are you? He replied, I am the son of Hyrcanus. Then said Rabbi Yochanan, art thou not the son of one of the great men of the world? And you didn't tell me? By thy life, he continued, this day shalt thou eat with me. You're sitting by my table, kid. Eliezer answered, I have eaten already with my host. Rabbi Yochanan said, who is your host? He replied, Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah and Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, the priest. Rabbi Yochanan sent him to inquire of his hosts, saying to them, did Eliezer eat with you this day? They answered, no. Moreover, he has not fasted 8 days without tasting has he fasted 8 days without tasting any food? Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah and Rabbi Yossi the priest went and said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, verily during the last 8 days Eliezer had not partaken of any food. Chapter 2. Now again, chapter 1, you'll see this is just the introduction to the story, okay? We're not even getting into the commentary right now because then this will really take forever. We don't have that. Mashiach is coming and soon. We don't have time for this. So but you're gonna understand. So chapter 2, Rabbi Eliezer and his brethren. The sons of Hyrcanus said to their father, he had other brothers, said to their father, get thee up to Jerusalem and vow that thy son Eliezer should not enjoy any of thy possessions. Because like I said, one of the greatest men in the world, he was the richest guy in the world, or one of the 3 richest guys in the world at the time. And his sons are like, yeah, listen, we're Torah machers, you know? So make sure that you're the guy that just learned Torah when he was 28 years old, make sure he doesn't get any of your possessions. So he went into Jerusalem to disinherit him. And it happened that a festival was being celebrated there by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. All the magnates of the district were dining with him, such as Ben Tzitzit, Hakneset, Nicodemus ben Gurion, and Ben Kalba Savua. So these were the heavy guys, right? Why was his name called Tzitzit HaKeset? Okay, these are the 3 guys. So here we go. Because he reclined at a table in a higher position than any other magnates of Jerusalem. Concerning Nicodemus ben Gurion, people said that he had stored provisions, that he had stored provisions containing 3 se'ah of fine flour for every inhabitant of Jerusalem. Meaning, if there was a siege or whatever, he could feed everybody. What is 3 se'ah? That's an average of 11.5 to 12 liters per 1 se'ah. Meaning that he stored roughly 35 liters of fine flour for every inhabitant of Jerusalem. 35 liters of fine flour for every inhabitant of Jerusalem. Think about the warehouses and the property that you need to store such things. And he did this for everywhere. That was Nicodemus. When the zealots arose and burnt all the storehouses, they measured and found that he had provisions for 3 years for every inhabitant of Jerusalem. Concerning Kalba Savua, we'll talk about him, it was told that he had a house measuring 4 cores with roofs covered with gold. 1 core is around 21,000 square meters. So he had 84,000 square meters of a house, which is over 900,000 square feet. I was Googling buildings that are 1 million square feet. They don't have them, but please, just so you can, and the roof, okay, here, I wrote down, that's half the size of the Pentagon. And the roof was covered in gold. Later on, if you don't know the story, the Kalva Savua became the father-in-law of Rabbi Akiva. The story goes as follows. I stopped reading now, I'm just explaining to you, okay? The Kalba Savua was the wealthiest man in Jerusalem, which is why they called him by his name, which meant satiated dog. Kalba Kelev Savua, Savea, satiated dog, right? Because dogs never get satiated, but he had so much that we're good. But not only that, That was as far as he was concerned, but it actually goes towards everybody else. Not only was every guest at his table always satiated, but so were all the dogs of the city from the scraps. When he had a party, even the dogs enjoyed themselves. It was like, all right, here we go. He had a daughter named Rachel, who he was saving for the greatest rabbi of the generation, Gdol Hador. Along comes in a plain shepherd named Akiva, who was the son of converts. This man could not read or write, nor was he a fan of the Torah. In fact, he lived his life despising the words of the sages and anything that came from it. Like we said I forgot in which Masechet it is, Rabbi Akiva was telling his students how before he did tshuva and started to read, he hated Talmidei Chachamim so much, Torah scholars so much, that he would bite them like a donkey. And then his students would say, Rabbi, you mean bite them like a dog? He goes, no, a donkey, because a donkey would actually bite through bone. That's how much he despised them. So, but the reason that God still kept him around was because he had good midot. So he wasn't, even though he despised them, he was an honest person. You understand? Still, he could work with a person who has good midot, who is honest. So anyway, so Akiva and Rachel met. He was around 40 years old, and Rachel turned Akiva onto Torah and the way of God. Her condition for marrying him was if we would go to the houses of study in order to learn Torah. This was mamash pure love, because she saw, this is for all the single men and women out there. It is very important you understand. Not all of us are going to or can actually fulfill our potential if we do not have our better half, if you will. And our better half has been endowed with the vision of not seeing the man where he is, but seeing the potential and where he can be. Okay? I got my Rachel. I'm just saying, it's not to boast. I'm very humble and grateful. Like I said, God did me it's almost like a favor. So, and we met, when I was 40. So it's a lot of, anyway, so it's cool. So you got to go learn Torah. Akiva only began to learn how to read and write when he was 40 years old, just like a 3-year-old would. He would sit in the classroom with 3-year-old children, 2-year-old children, learning how to read and write. He had many battles along the way, primarily with his pride, understandable. But the most severe of all challenges was the fact that Rachel's father disowned her because she chose Akiva as a husband, and she forwent all of her father's wealth only to live in complete poverty with a man with no skills he could shepherd, but again, he couldn't read or write. But she believed in him. She saw the man that he would become as opposed to the man that he was. So her father, the great Kalba Savua, publicly declared through an oath that he would never speak to his daughter again, let alone give her so much as a penny. They were so poor that during the winter months they would sleep in barns and cover themselves with hay. As Akiva was picking the hay out of his wife's hair, they could perhaps maybe find some wheat in there that they could eat. Eliyahu Hanavi came and knocked on the barn door, changing his appearance to a poor man. He said to Akiva, my wife has just given birth, and we have nothing. Could you spare some wheat and barley? Akiva turned to Rachel and said, look, this poor man does not even have straw or wheat. So they gave him what he had. You never know who knocks on your door, kids. You never know who you're talking to. At this moment, Akiva turned to his beloved wife and said to her, if I had money, I would buy you a Yerushalayim shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold. This was a very rare and expensive tiara, being the skyline of the city of Jerusalem etched in pure gold. 24 years went by, and Akiva returned to her as Rabbi Akiva, the greatest rabbi of the generation with 24,000 students behind him. First it was 12 years, and then he came up to the door and someone was questioning her, "Woman, what are you doing? You're waiting for this guy 12 years, you haven't seen him?" And she said, "I know exactly what he's doing, and I see the man that he is to become, and I would wait for another 12 years for him." At that moment, he, with his 12,000 students, turned around and walked away and came back another 12 years later. So 24 years later that he has not seen his beloved wife, but he comes back with 24,000 students. He is now Gdol Hador, Rabbi Akiva. He presented her with a gift, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold. I just want to say this because it's really nice, because again, Anarina and I were very taken by this story. When we got married, I got Anarina Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. I used to have it here in the beginning of the teachings, but she wore it on her wedding day. So anyway, this is a very nice thing. So Rabbi Akiva is now a 64-year-old man with a long beard and gray hair, almost unrecognizable from the uneducated shepherd that he was before. As Rachel tried to approach her husband, the crowd shoved her out of the way, not knowing who she was, trying to get to Rabbi Akiva themselves. But when Rabbi Akiva saw this, he told them, "Back away," and declared, listen to this now, "All my knowledge of all the Torah and all your knowledge of all the Torah belongs to her." You understand? Do you understand? She was his inspiration for becoming who he was. Therefore, anyone who learned Torah from Rabbi Akiva, which includes till this very day myself and now all of you, is thanks to Rachel, his wife. Tzadikim and tzadikot. This is how Torah, it's like a fire. If you have a flame from one and you light another wick, does it take away from this flame? No, but now you have more and more fire. This is what Torah is. Ignite. As those 24 years went by and the Kalva Savua was getting old, and he made it known to his friends that he deeply regretted sending away his daughter. He would do anything to undo the oath that he took. But none of the rabbis at that time would dare take it upon themselves to decree to undo what was said. The only person who could was Gadol Hador, the guy who all the sages said he is the greatest of us today. Who was the greatest? Rabbi Akiva. And so it went that when the greatest rabbi of the generation came to town with a crowd of 24,000 students, and tens of thousands of inhabitants of the city, naturally the Kalba Savua made it his business to meet this man. If not for the sake of undoing his oath, so he could see and support his own daughter again. But he didn't know that he was who he was talking to. He came to ask him about nullifying his vow, and Rabbi Akiva said to him, "Did you vow thinking that this Akiva person would become a great man?" Meaning, he did not know that it was Rabbi Akiva in front of him. So this guy, Akiva, so if this Rabbi Akiva is supposedly great, which we're told that you heard that he was, would you have made this vow? Meaning, what was going on in your heart of hearts while you were declaring these words? Because as we have learned, it's all about the intention behind what we said. If it was it in anger? Most likely in anger, right? When we do things in anger, we know that it's avodah zara, that's not actually really us. We don't work in anger, because if we work through God, then we work through love, right? And so this is why we make the decisions in a clear mind with much understanding. And this, by the way, is how God judges us, as only He knows the hearts of men. So when you do a mitzvah, you never know. You have to be so aware of where your intentions are. This is a whole nother level of understanding, okay? This is not something really that can be taught, but I can tell you, the more you delve into Torah, it will already come naturally. That's how this works, okay? It's not close your eyes and think of this and think of that. It has nothing to do with that. Each person, wherever it is that they stand on their own level. But the more you get into Torah, avodah, gemilut chasadim, this will become who you are. And it's a lifelong thing, okay? Not me. I'm not sitting here telling you what's what. I'm telling you I struggle with this every day, but we can't stop. That's what I'm telling you, okay? I fall every day. And every day, Thank God, I get up. Okay, so only God knows the hearts of men. He said to him, if I believed he would know even one chapter, the Kalba Savua is saying it to Rabbi Akiva, his son-in-law, who he does not recognize. Speaking of Rabbi Akiva, if I had believed that he would even know one chapter or even one halacha, I would not have been so harsh. He said to him, I am he. Ben Kalva Savua fell on his face and kissed his feet and gave him half his money. This is the story of Rabbi Akiva and the Kalva Savua. And where did Rabbi Akiva go to learn Torah? He went to the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, who we are currently learning about. See what I'm saying? It's all connected. It's amazing. So we are now learning about the teacher of Rabbi Akiva the Great. We're learning about Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol. So let's continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. The people said to Rabbi Yochanan, behold, the father of Rabbi Eliezer has arrived, right? He was coming together with all the big machers. Big machers are the guys, the guys with big names. He bade them, saying, prepare a place for him and seat him next to us. I want his dad next to us. Rabbi Yochanan fixed his gaze on Rabbi Eliezer, saying to him, tell us some words of Torah, okay? The Gdol Adol, who was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, told Rabbi Eliezer at the table when his father's sitting next to them, go ahead. What you got for it? What's the parsha? Tell us, what's going on? Rabbi Eliezer answered him, saying, Rabbi, I will tell thee a parable. To what is the matter like? To this well which cannot yield more water than the amount which it has drawn from the earth. Likewise, am I unable to speak words of the Torah in excess of what I have received from thee? He's comparing himself to a well. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, I will also tell thee a parable. To what is the matter like? To this fountain which is bubbling and sending forth its water, and it is able to effect a discharge more powerful than that what it secretes. In like manner, he's probably talking about a geyser, right? In like manner, art thou able to speak words of the Torah in excess of what Moses received at Sinai? In other words, not only are you taking what you learned, but you're able to extrapolate on that. This is what I keep telling you. Chokhmah, wisdom, here, great. Open a book, read. Wonderful. These are words, but what can you do with these words? This is where understanding comes in, binah. Without binah, all the words in the world are just words and you can just regurgitate them. But with understanding, you can extrapolate upon them. Those two together give you dot. This is the knowledge of God, because you realize that you're reading with your intelligence, but then you have understanding from God, and together you better understand him. You see, it all works together. So this is what he was saying to him. You were like a geyser, right? Rabbi Yochanan continued, lest thou shouldst feel ashamed on my account, behold, I will rise and go away from thee. In other words, if you feel like you can't fully speak Torah because maybe you're going to speak about things that I did not teach you, so you don't feel that you're offending your rabbi, I'll walk away. It's okay. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai arose and went outside. You see this? Thereupon Rabbi Eliezer sat down and expounded. Here we go. His face shone like the light of the sun, and his effulgence beamed forth like that of Moses, so that no one knew whether it was day or night. They went and said to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, come and see Rabbi Eliezer sitting and expounding. His face is shining like the sun, like the light of the sun, and his effulgence beamed like that of Moses, so that no one knows whether it be day or night. He came from his place behind him and kissed him on his head, saying to him, happy are ye, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because this one has come forth from your loins. To get that kind of a bracha from Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, whoo, 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 whoo. Horkanus, his father, said, To whom does Rabbi Yochanan speak thus? I can hear someone speaking, but who's saying all these words? The people answered, to Eliezer, your son. He was coming to disown him, right? He said to them, Rabbi Yochanan should not have spoken in that manner, but happy am I because he has come forth from my loins. Whilst Rabbi Eliezer was sitting and expounding, his father was standing upon his feet. When Eliezer saw his father standing upon his feet, he became agitated and said to him, my father, be seated, for I cannot utter the words of the Torah when thou art standing on thy feet. Kibud olim. Hyrcanus replied to him, my son, it was not for this reason that I came, but my intention was to disinherit thee. Now that I have come and I have witnessed all this praise, behold, thy brothers are disinherited, and their portion is given to thee as a gift. Eliezer replied, verily, I am not equal to one of them. Not that he was playing himself down. No. If I had asked the Holy One, blessed be he for land, it would be possible for him to give this to me, as it said, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Psalms 24:1. Had I asked the Holy One, blessed be he for silver and gold, he could have given them to me, as it is said, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. Haggai 2:8. But I asked the Holy One, blessed be he, that I might be worthy to learn the Torah only. As it is said, therefore I esteem all precepts concerning all things to be right, and I hate every false way. Psalms 119, 128. That's all he asked for, right? And now he got everything. It's like, Solomon, right? God's like, what do you want? Ask. He goes, you want wealth? You want lands? You want horses? I'll give you whatever you want because you are the son of David, my guy. Ask and it's yours. He says, I need wisdom, not even from myself, for your people, so I could judge between good and evil, between right and wrong. How could Solomon say these things? Because as we know today, good and evil is not a clear line. Today, the world is promoting evil as good and good as evil. So even today, if you don't delve into the Torah and follow it meticulously, you can also be deceived. You can also be fooled. Right? This is why we have to. This is why we really have to get into it and stick with it and continue to ask the questions. This is how we grow. Okay. So thus concludes chapters 1 and 2 from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Now, I did not think it important to add the sage's commentary in these 2 chapters. There's plenty of study to come. Okay. Next week is a much longer teaching. Especially since this really is a story of a man whose only desire was to draw near to God. How do you draw near to God? Learn Torah, follow the halachot. And then once you get that understanding, you can start expounding upon it. Obviously, you need a rabbi to teach this to you. The stories of Rabbi Eliezer and his student Rabbi Akiva remind me of several ways of the stories of Moses and David combined. Rabbi Eliezer was 28 years old. Right? When we first meet him and he was considered the lowest of his father's son, David was 28 years old when Samuel anointed him as king. And he too was barely considered his father's son. There are midrashim that David never slept under a roof until that point because there was a question to his validity. But it was because of David's hardship and rejection that gave him plenty of time away from people in total hitbodedut, self-seclusion. He started writing those psalms when he was away from everyone. That's where you get this thing. Till this day, people go on hitbodeduyot. For those of you who live in the country, go out by yourself. No cell phone, no nothing. Just have a conversation with God because you can speak directly to God. That is how we were all created. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying. Okay? Which many of the Kabbalists and sages express the best way to draw near to God, primarily Rabbi Nachman from Breslev. Seclusion by yourself. Doesn't have to happen for days on end. Go for an hour. An hour. Just you and God. If you can't, if you live in the city or whatever, because I know I live in Jerusalem right now, what do? I'm sitting right here. This is my office space. I I close the door and shut the lights, and I just start speaking, and whatever comes out, and I make sure to have a tissue box next to me, because sometimes that happens too. You never know what's going to come out. But when you start speaking to your maker, who put you here for a reason, there's nothing like it, and it will help your walk, absolutely. So, like we said, because of the Itbodediyot of David, this is how he started writing Tehillim, the Psalms, which we use today, as David did. Only David on his Hitbodediyot wrote the Tehillim that we read today, and of course also continued with the Psalms after that time. We could see David running from his son, David when this happened, David when that happened, for the majority of his life. He never complained. He was not proud. He just wanted to serve God, and he lived accordingly. Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old when he began to learn how to read and write, and he became not only one of the greatest rabbis in our history, but was most likely one of the greatest poskim, meaning the oral law. Like, no, this is the best way to do this, and so on. There is a midrash that says that one of the things that Moses saw when he ascended upon Mount Sinai, was the Torah that Rabbi Akiva was teaching his students. It says that, and Moses sat in the 8th row. Why 8? You guys know the significance of number 8. Anyway, Moses was terrified at this man's greatness, and he told God that Rabbi Akiva should receive the Torah, not him. To which God replied, he is expounding upon the Torah that you are going to give him and all of Israel. Rabbi Akiva was able to read the crowns on top of the letters. We discussed this. If you open a Torah scroll, you'll see that there are crowns on top of the letters. Even those have meaning. Rabbi Akiva understood those and expounded upon them. I've said this in previous teachings, but everything, the 5 books of Moses, has a meaning, as well as the very space between the letters themselves. When Mashiach comes, the whole Torah scroll, even not only the black letters, because it says that it's written black fire on white fire, but rather the space in between them has meaning. We can't get that today, but all of Israel will be taught this. Rabbi Akiva was so advanced that he was able to understand what wasn't there in addition to what was. Moses got the call when he was 80, after 60 years of running away from his people. But when Moses returned, once a humble shepherd, now the Redeemer of Israel, so too did Akiva return, once a humble shepherd, now the greatest rabbi of the generation. And guess what? They're actually linked to one another. For instance, Rabbi Eliezer's teacher, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, was a direct descendant from the line of David, like we said. Rabbi Akiva, who was the son of converts, had the neshama of Ephraim and Yosef, and if the time would have been right, he would actually have been the Mashiach ben Yosef of the generation. We discussed this in the previous teachings. And so the reason that I chose Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is because these incredible men, all of them, they all struggled. They all had challenges to overcome. They all fell, but they all got back up. They taught others the ways of God according to the Torah. And when they weren't fighting battles and splitting the seas, they sat down and they delved right in. And these classes are a reflection of their words and of their thoughts. So stay tuned, please, for next week as we go through the 6 days of creation, like you've never seen them before, starting with almost what happened before. So starting basically with day 1 and the thoughts even of day 1. So thank you so much for joining me. So excited to get into this. So many good things are to come. New beginnings, new year. Y'all have a great rest of the week right now, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.